What are you doing out here? I thought they evacuated town.
I don't know, Zane. I could ask you the same question. I hope your mom knows you're out past your little bedtime. I would fire you if I wasn't banging her.
Shut up, idiot!
Hi, I'm Ben and welcome to Field & Foley episode 20. Today it's an absolute pleasure to have Tyler Brannan as my guest. His multifaceted skills span game production, marketing, writing, on-screen and voiceover performances, and even an interesting stint as an amateur pro wrestler. As the CEO of In the Keep LLC, an indie game development and publishing venture, Tyler's dedication extends beyond personal achievements to uplifting and connecting the community. Previously serving as a weather forecaster for the United States Air Force, his journey into game development is as intriguing as it is inspiring. Beyond his impressive role as brand manager at 3D Realms and being the talented host of the Indie Keep podcast, Tyler's true mark lies in being a wonderful human being. Always focused on connecting and supporting others, he directs his efforts toward helping people. Not just an industry enthusiast, Tyler's also a dear friend, someone whose generosity and genuine care for others are truly commendable. So welcome, Ty. Glad to have you on.
Wow, somebody read my LinkedIn page. No, I really appreciate it, Ben. It's an honor to finally be on your show. I've been begging you since literally like before you actually started it, when you first told me you were interested in doing it. And I know I'm not a sound designer per se, although I did. So the thing is that I did do some sounds for Stellar Valkyrie before you came on and listened to them and said, these are shit, you should let me do it. And I was like, that's probably a good idea.
Yeah. I actually created this podcast just so we could have this episode. It's all a ruse.
Yeah, okay. I believe you.
Yeah, but like diving right into it, one thing I'd like my listeners to know is what inspired you to transition from being a weather forecaster in the Air Force to a career in game development, because that's a leap.
In one word, desperation, passion, maybe would be another word. But I mean, I fucking hate it. I don't want to trash on the Air Force, and I don't, because they might come get me. But no, I don't want to. I don't want to just say in like blanket statement say it was a bad experience, because I learned a lot of valuable things, and it was a big part of my life. But I was fucking miserable doing what I was doing, and I wanted to. Well, for the first, I don't know, I was there for 6 years. The first 3 years, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I was just kind of doing the military to figure that out, to kind of give myself some space in life to stop, breathe, and think about what do I want from this life.
Yeah.
And around the 3-year mark is when I got really, really, really into Quake, like to a near like obsessive autistic level. And I was really interested in this podcast called The State of Quake. It was ran by 2 dudes named Unkind and Slip, and occasionally another dude named D-Ron, where they just covered Quake Champions, basically. And I really loved their podcast, and I wanted to contribute, so then that's kind of how In the Keep got started. And from there, I interviewed, I don't know, I've got like thousands of hours probably of interviews with game devs, and then around the time of Realms Deep 2021, I got it in my head, like, I think I could do that. Like, I think I could do that, probably. And one of the things that I like to I have this YouTube video that I was interviewed at Gamescom. You were there, actually, where I said, like, they were asking me about going to college for games, and I'm thinking about that. I'm like, if you go to college and you get like this degree that says you're accredited for like X number of hours in classes learning about whatever, I'm like, well, I don't have a piece of paper, but I could like fucking literally show you. Can I cuss?
Yeah, of course you can.
Okay. I could literally show you like the interviews where I'm talking long form to people who are more educated probably on the subject than your college professor. So that is kind of how it all came to be. And then by the time my contract was up, I had already gotten a job offer at 3DR, and Fred Schreiber, was like, come do that. So that was the beginning of my production career.
That's awesome.
Or at least officially.
Yeah, and now you work as the brand manager at 3D Realms, and what exactly do you do in your role, just for people that don't know what that is?
Oh, nothing. Like, I just kind of hang out and, annoy people, play Grand Theft Auto on my laptop. No, so, yeah, it's interesting. I find I've always made fun of the fact that job titles are kind of stupid. Like whatever your job title is probably just nonsense. And no matter what your field is, I mean, in your case, it's like sound designer. Well, what does that really mean? I mean, that it could mean a lot of different things. But in the case of brand management in video games, typically this means someone whose job it is to put together the market plans for the games. So while a game is in production, you come up with the strategy for how you are going to sell it to an audience. And that's like a sometimes multiple years long, sometimes a few months, sometimes a year or 9 months, whatever serves the purpose of the particular title you're working on, and you plan out all of the social media, you plan out all of the conventions that you're going to go to, the trailers that are going to drop, the dev blogs, everything. So another part of it is just being in constant communication with the developers themselves and making sure they have everything they need, making sure that they're on track, making sure that their relationships say good and no one's got reading into anything the wrong way or whatever. I mean, it's basically just a babysitting job, just like being a producer. It's being a mom.
Being a mom, yeah, to all the devs. Yeah, I mean that touches perfectly on your start of the career of talking to devs and being in contact and trying to organize and connecting people and projects. And I totally agree with you with the job titles thing, because I've been struggling myself. I recently changed it to sound designer and recording specialist, because I have so many things where I'm just out recording something and that's the thing that I'm delivering.
Right.
So it's not a sound design at all. But also, I mean, what is a recording specialist? I mean, I have no idea. I just made it up because it sounded fancy. But in the end, I'm beginning to not give a shit at all, because I don't want to apply for a job with the job title. I want people to know me and say, hey, I need something for this. You do sound good. Do you want to work on that? And that's essentially also how it happened. I mean, you introduced me to 3D drums and gave me the opportunity to work on combustion, which I really like. And just recently, a good friend of mine has basically just gave my contact info to an indie game developer and said hey, I can't do sound, but I know a guy that can. And so, yeah, they don't care what my job title is. It's they know what they need, and I can provide it.
Noise engineer.
Noise engineer, yeah. Master of noise.
Or what's the word? Energy transferred through air particle specialist.
Air Wiggles, yeah. That's a nice community, by the way. Shout out to Air Wiggles. It's like the social media for sound people. It's very nerdy.
I bet it's
But
a
wonderful.
bunch of fucking dweebs. Total, just like people like you with purple mohawks. And
it's not purple, it's blue right now.
Doing hippie shit. I'm colorblind.
Yeah, right. I forgot
literally can't tell the difference.
I always forget that. I don't know why. I always forget that.
It's not important. It's like the most mild disability I think you could possibly have.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't matter to sound. So as long as you can hear good sound, I'm happy. So, yeah, but then you work at as a brand manager, but why the wrestling? And how does that tie in with other endeavors? Is this something that is connects to your job? Because I mean, it's basically a bit of showmanship as well, right? So,
I mean, that's a whole different topic that I'm not sure your sound design audience wants to get into, but I'm happy to tell it.
Yeah, sure. I mean, let's go on a tangent.
I've been obsessed with pro wrestling since I was a baby. I remember watching Kane and The Undertaker on TV when I was a little boy. In fact, my middle name is Kane, and I thought that my mom named me after him, even though that's completely not true. He came out 2 years after I was born, but I always loved wrestling so much. Then when I was in high school, me and my friends were a bunch of stupid rednecks. I grew up in Alabama, so we did a lot of backyard trampoline, hardcore wrestling, smashing each other with Guitar Hero controllers and, metal pans or whatever we could find, and getting power bombed on the hood of cars, anything we could do to just, reenact what we were seeing on TV. If you're a parent and you think that kids don't do things just because they see them on TV, you are dead wrong. That's totally wrong. But yeah, we were having a lot of fun, and then I just decided when I was about 17 that that's what I wanted to do for a career. So when I graduated high school, I went directly to a school called WWA4. It's ran by Mr. Hughes up in Atlanta, Georgia. and I did like a week-long camp there where I learned like the basic, kind of techniques of this is how a ring works and this is how the sport works and all that sort of thing. Although I think I fundamentally understood how to do wrestling moves, but like the actual, fundamentals of it is what I was lacking. So I learned a lot of that there. And then when I came back, I ended up with a private trainer named Dalton Cross, God rest his soul. And I ended up doing a bunch of wrestling shows just around the Southeast and Gulf Coast. And I loved it. And then I was actually injured pretty badly in a training accident. I got hit in the head with a steel chair, had a horrible concussion and a bunch of staples in my head. And I was about 19 at the time.
That explains a lot.
Yeah, it does. I'm a little bit crazy because of that, amongst other things. And then I kind of had to reconsider my life at that point. I was like, okay, well, I'm not making any money at this, and I'm hurt right now, so I can't do any of it. So, I had this job as an electrician's apprentice, but that was also not paying worth a shit. So I decided to join the Air Force. I tested really high on my entry score, so I was like, give me the hardest job you could possibly give me. And they did.
Nice.
And then I failed out of that first job, which was to be a linguist. I learned a bit of Arabic, but I wasn't exactly up to pace with the rest of the class. So I ended up retraining into weather, which is also very difficult, but in a different way. A bit more, science related instead of just linguistics. So I did that for the next 4 years. And then when I got here to Denmark, when we were planning Realms Deep, where you may have seen me get choke slammed off the stage, I had already gotten in contact with a local wrestling company called Body Slam. And they invited me down to their training center. And I was like, fuck, I really love this. I really miss this. So actually last week, if you're listening to this now, it's, early January 2024. But last week was my first match in about 10 years.
Awesome. That's cool. And now you're not dependent on like income for it, so you can do it for the fun of it. That's great.
Just fun. Yeah, just for fun.
But now, you're a brand manager, you do wrestling, and then also you have this company in the Keep LLC. So could you share a bit more about like what this is and what your vision is for it, or all your visions, because it's not just you, right?
Yeah, it's the company is me and Josh Gilmo. He's my business partner, and we founded in the Keep together officially a long time ago, back before we even knew you, if you believe that. But we just kind of had this vision to do. I was already doing the podcast, but we wanted to do more video game related production, so we did a lot of tournaments and streams and charity events. So if anybody saw the Pigeon Classics back in the day, or we had this one that was like right at 2020 called Going the Social Distance, where we raised a bunch of money for like the Florence Nightingale Foundation. It was just a lot of fun, but yeah, we wanted to make it legit. So after, like I said earlier, after Realms Deep 2020, I got it in my head. I'm like, I think I could like gather a couple of people that I think are awesome and make a game happen. So that at that point is when I had contacted Uber, who is the director of Stellar Valkyrie, and also at the time a guy named Scumhead, who was the artist at first. And we just came up with the idea of the game, and we've been working on it slowly but surely ever since. I'm hoping that it comes out one of these days, but I'm in no rush because, we all have real jobs. We all have full-time gigs, and it's not like I don't see in the Keep right now as something that I need to put pressure on myself to turn into a big thing. It's like I have the freedom to kind of take my time to do whatever I want with it. And so instead of making it an additional source of stress, I just make it like this fun thing that we can all do together on the side.
Yeah. And so you were motivated to start like the gaming company right at the beginning. It wasn't about the podcast, or was it like started with the podcast first and then you thought like, oh, maybe we can also make a game?
The company was founded before we became a game development studio.
Yeah. So in the beginning it was
producing live streaming for esports and podcasts.
And doing so much stuff, also wrestling on the side, and this job and making a game here and having a podcast. Though, like recently, you haven't released new episodes, but still, how do you balance all your roles, the different jobs, the different companies?
I don't.
Is it like you don't?
No, I'm a mess. I'm like a complete, total, absolute mess. To be honest with you, the truth is I'm struggling, but I don't know. I managed to keep a happy face on and just kind of roll with the punches.
And I mean, there's nothing that you can really drop because everything is fun, right?
Why? I could. I have dropped many things, but like those are the things that I'm kind of not willing to negotiate on. Like I won't let In the Keeps Vision die. I won't let Call us Ragnar, Stellar Valkyrie go out of my sight. Not as long as I can do anything about it. I love that stuff. Wrestling is just a side hobby that doesn't take up a lot of time, to be honest with you. And then 3D Realms is most of my life at this point.
Yeah. And I mean, from all your years doing the podcast, can you share any highlights that you had during the podcast where it's like, do you have any favorite episodes or any moments in time where you're like, oh fuck, now I'm like a real podcast. I have this specific guest or something happened that like really made this feel, I don't know, impactful?
Yeah, there are definitely. I mean, it's like picking which of your children you like the most. But to be, I think the moment when I realized that it actually meant something was when I went to QuakeCon 2019 and I interviewed Andrew Holschult in a hotel room. And it was like before that I was sort of just like super indie, and I was interviewing like pro Quake players or like people making indie boomer shooters and that kind of stuff. But once Andrew was on the show, it was like, now if I show someone the catalog and I say like, hey, would you be interested in doing this show? And they read Andrew Holschult's name, they were like, oh, well, if Andrew did it, I mean, it must be legit. So then it started rolling. Then it was like, now I've got David Szymanski from Dusk, and I had Dave Oshry on at one point. I had Stephen Kick from Night Dive, and I, of course, met Fred Schreiber through the podcast as well. So, and he's my boss now. I've got Disaster Piece was probably one of my favorite episodes that I ever did because
That was wonderful.
I was a huge fan of his. I mean, I was following him since Fez, way before he was into movies or even Hyperlight Drifter or any of that stuff. So I was like mesmerized by this guy for a very, very long time. And when I finally got to interview him, it was like a dream come true. And there are many others. I mean, so some of my best friends are people who I just interviewed on the podcast once, and then we just hit it off. You and Damian and Tony included.
Yeah. I mean, we met even before we had the podcast, right? Because like you came on the Call of Ragnar team and then...
No, I interviewed you guys.
Oh, you interviewed us first, right?
As just guests. And then I kept asking Damian annoying questions about his production plan and like his business model. And then he was like, do you want to just like be the project manager on this? And I actually applied for the job by writing a PowerPoint like presentation about why he didn't need me. And then at the end of it, he decided he still needed me.
Yeah, it was a wise choice, man. It was a wise choice. I still think that. No, that's wonderful. Oh yeah, I always thought that the podcast came after that, but still, I mean, yeah, we became friends through that, and yeah, now we are like entangled somehow, which is weird.
That's how the universe works, man. Like we're just all particles colliding together randomly, and you meet up with positive and negatively charged particles, and they stick together forever, and that's how it works. And then we blast through entropy together, and hopefully one day we all just go out in another Big Bang and start a new universe or something akin to that.
So something akin to that. We all go back to star stuff. But what's really like remarkable about you is that you have this inherent drive, at least from my perspective, to connect people together without having any sort of interest in like personal gain. You know what I mean? Like you see two people or you know people and you're like, oh shit, you should talk to this person because I think you could hit it off or I think you could work together. And it's just, at least from my experience, it's always because you know that has to happen somehow. That's like, oh, these people need to meet. There will something great will come out of this. And often it does. And what drives you to like just connect people? Is it like something you can't name, or is it something where it's like it's enjoyable for you to see people flourish and being friends, or what is it? What's in your mind?
Empathy.
Empathy.
If there's one word to describe it, it's just empathy. Like I see people who, have talents that they want to exercise, and I see someone else who has a talent that could be complemented by the other person's talent, and I'm like, I don't want to get all hippy dippy on you because I was making fun of y'all earlier for being hippies, but like the truth is, like I really do, like I feel like I feel their their emotions and their drive, and their, like, I can just tell there's something here that needs to come out. Oftentimes, especially with production or even with brand management now, I like to describe it like, look at great artists of any kind, any medium, even as far as like the sciences and architecture or anything like that. People who do great works do it because they absolutely feel like they fucking have to. I mean, you shouldn't write a novel unless you feel like you have to, or else you'll just end up bankrupt. Like, that's how that works. You shouldn't make a video. You should not be in video games unless you are willing to die for it. And I mean that when I say it. Like, don't even, like, if it's not the most important thing to you, other than like, family, children, whatever, that's of course that, but like your passion in life, don't even try it. It's not worth it. It's just going to hurt you. But many times great artists who feel like they can't get it out of them, and they end up dead. They end up dying of suicide or drug addiction or alcoholism or whatever, and it's because they have this need to just make themselves understood. And I like to say that if they could do that by just saying it out loud with words or writing it down on a piece of paper, then they would, and then they would be done. But, for someone like Frederick Strum, he needs to make Combustion. For someone like Damian Mozetish, he needs to make Call of Sir Ragnar. That is his brain baby that's like really within his heart. He wants that so badly, and I can just feel it, and I want to do everything that I can to help him exercise that. That's who I am, man. Like, I've felt that way my entire life. To get kind of deep about it, like my mother used to always say that about me, like, you would do anything for someone you care about, and that is how I operate.
Yeah, that's really. I mean, I can feel it the same way, but I don't know. I mean, I've started as well connecting people, because I'm guessing hanging out with you has somehow colored myself in that way of thinking, in that way of, oh, I should tell this person to talk to this person, because I'm guessing they have something in common, or they both have this drive, just like you said, like with Damian or with Fred, like you can really feel that. And when you have other people that also have a drive and work on something that, could complement that, it's a beautiful thing. So yeah, you certainly influenced me in my way of thinking, of trying to also connect people together, and it's cool. It feels like it's this wave of, just like you said, it's an empathy thing. It's this wave of feeling good for other people, and it's just multiplying. It's not taking away anything from anyone else. So there's no downside to it. Yeah, basically. So
I mean, not to project my own drives onto others, because I don't think that's necessarily fair, but I mean, I feel like most people really, really, really want to feel like someone else understands. And I think that, I mean, even with a little bit of studying of linguistics or even computer language, or if you're into general artificial intelligence now, but anything, people want to be able to take what's in their heart or in their brain and have someone else look at it or experience it, and hopefully spark a similar feeling in the other person. I mean, that is what communication literally is. That's what sign language is. That's what it's the ability to use something to make another person experience the same idea that you have in your mind. And I think that is the fundamental to the human experience. Not even just the human experience. I mean, like, animals do this as well. So do plants. So do fungi. It's life. It's a really beautiful thing that I think is absolutely sacred, and something that needs to be fostered. And it's a duty. If you're the kind of person who is meant to just be part of that puzzle, like if you're if you feel like you're a cog on the wheel of something, but you're just happy to serve, then that's beautiful too. But if you're a natural leader, then it's like you're, excuse me for whatever like language I choose to try to convey this idea, but it's your like God-given duty to do that, or else you're just wasting your potential. So you should try.
Yeah, yeah. And that's something that if you don't pursue that will make you depressed in the end, because it's going against your own nature of the things. And yeah, and I agree with you also with the being understood part. And I always, like, in the past, I've always thought, like in the far past, in my youth, in 19, no, but I always thought, like, if you can like express your feelings to the very last detail, that another person could understand it exactly the same way, which is foolish. But as I said, I was young. But then for me, like, the pivotal moment came when one of my best friends, Steffen, actually showed me a movie that he really enjoyed, and we watched it together. It was Solaris. Unfortunately, not the Russian version, but the American version. But still, I love that movie. And the cool thing is that we both really enjoyed it, and it made him feel very hopeful and happy, and it made me feel alone and depressed. And it was the same movie, and we both had an interesting experience. And actually, like right now, or like many years later, I now feel the same way. I now feel also hopeful, and it also gives me the same feeling. But it's just because also my personality and my life and everything has changed. But it made me realize that what's really cool about arts, it doesn't matter in what kind of form, if it's music or video games or movies, it's just your expression of your things, and then it goes out there, and everyone else has their personal experience, and it will never be exactly the same. And that's in some way beautiful. It used to make me depressed because it meant for me, like, oh, no one can ever understand me 100%. But now it's like this, it doesn't matter, because like you can connect on so many different points, and even if you don't feel exactly the same thing, it's not about that. It's about just communicating and sharing experiences, and they will always be different.
How many parties have you been to that have at some point devolved into like everyone's half drunk and they're just like putting on YouTube videos or showing each other memes on their phone or whatever? It's like, look at this. And it's like, to me, a lot of that stuff can be quite annoying, to be honest with you. But
same.
But what's going on there is this intense need for one human to share something with another human, and to see that other person gets it. Like, oh, he gets it. And usually your best friends are the people you're like, that motherfucker gets it. You know, he understands. That's what people use that in their language all the time. He understands. She understands me. Your wife, you might say that about, you know, your best friends, your parents, your children, even, is like probably the most ultimate form of that. It's like, you know, that's your literal DNA in that little person. So when they enjoy something that you show them, that's like, oh, I'm a good parent. Unless it's like serial murderers. I don't know.
Of course.
I mean, if you're a great serial murderer and you teach your kid to be a great serial murderer and you bond over that,
you've done your job, yeah.
Yeah, maybe you're a good parent to a degree.
For your standards and your morals, yeah.
Sure, yeah.
Reminds me of Dexter, yeah.
But yeah, that's a good example, actually. I quite love that show, and it's like him and his sister have that really interesting dynamic where it's like she'll never really understand him, but at least she cares enough about him to kind of displace some of her some of the things that she would usually find disgusting, and just let him be who he is. It's a really beautiful relationship.
Yeah, it was an amazing story arc. Great writing, and the acting was absolutely amazing, yeah. But yeah, speaking of understanding things, I want to touch on the current state of the game industry, because, I mean, it doesn't matter when people hear this, because it's been going on for a while, and it's going to be going on up and downwards forever. But there have been massive layoffs in big studios and little studios, also at 3D Realms where you work, and more so like Slipgate Ironworks and the Embracer Group. So, like, what is your take on the current state of the game industry? Why this is happening, and what does this mean for example, people right now, like sound people that are searching for a job?
Excuse me, I just, before I jump into this, I will say that there's some degree of this that I have to be vague about, because I don't want to.
Of course.
I don't want to talk about any particular person's, job, if that makes sense. But I will comment on the industry as a whole for sure.
Yeah.
As you know, as a podcaster and even as a writer, I was I really deeply analyzed especially that kind of like higher grade indie sphere for quite a long time, and now I'm in it. And while I was in it, it became not indie anymore. It became like, oh shit, there's corporate money now. So I've gotten to kind of learn firsthand. But the way that I see it is, uh, the industry got too big for its britches during COVID. I mean, you had before that for the years leading up to it. I think that Dusk was like a perfect storm. Speaking of like the indie first person shooter kind of market, that game was right place, right time, right marketing, everything. Like the lightning caught in a bottle. Everything. Whatever you think of the game itself doesn't really matter. It sold a lot of money, and David Szymanski's like a millionaire now. So kiss my ass. But people in general, in my peer group, and in the kind of level of game company that would have competed with New Blood at the time, everybody saw that, and everybody wanted a piece of the pie. And if you looked at New Blood's business model, which I mean, I would welcome Dave Oshry to come on your show and correct me or even tell me anything. I have huge respect for that guy. I'm a huge fan. I've always loved him, and he's always been super kind to me. But everybody saw what he was doing, and they're like, that's the way to do it. And the thing is that it kind of works for him, but it doesn't necessarily work for everybody. But they had this kind of model where it was like, you find a guy who's making a game kind of solo, and then you just introduce him into the group, and then everybody kind of bands around them to help them ship the game eventually. And they don't have deadlines, they don't crunch, etc., all that kind of thing. Night Dive Studios is also a great example of a company that found exactly their niche, just like taking old games and porting them. And then now they have like fucking contracts with Star Wars, and like System Shock was like Game of the Year or something like that. It's incredible. Absolutely incredible. But everybody in the games industry in that kind of just below the becoming like a corporate publicly traded sort of thing wanted to recreate that. And the thing is, you're not going to catch lightning in the bottle twice. Like it's like the ship of indie shooters kind of sailed about 4 years ago. That was the time to make money on it. Granted, there are still many great ones coming out and all, but it's just like they're not going to be Dusk again. At least not for another 10 or 15 years when the cycle repeats itself. So during COVID, everybody was laid off or, at home, working from home. All the hobbyist video game people were like, I can make a game. And then Realms Deep, that was my baby. We promoted the shit out of it. I mean, we were like, let's fucking go. Everybody can make a game. Like Oprah Winfrey, like you get a game, you get a game, you get a game. And if you just want to make a game and you're not worried about that being your livelihood, hell yeah. But the thing is that like a lot of companies started hiring up all of these people. Like lots and lots of people were hired. They could work remotely. They could, fucking just turn their indie dream into a massive success. And then there's a lot of corporate buyouts happened at the same time. And there was just money forever. And then COVID ended, and everybody went back to their day jobs, and everybody went back to real life and started hanging out with people again instead of sitting in their basements eating fucking flaming hot Cheetos and drinking Code Red Mountain Dew and making games. And then suddenly the market has to correct itself, and that's what we're experiencing at this moment, in my analysis.
Yeah, that's also my feeling of it. But it's like, yeah, how do you see then like the landscape of the indie game development in the next few years? Is it like now is the crash, everyone gets laid off, and then from the ashes riseth a new companies, new projects?
Yeah, in like 2 years, there's going to be a bunch of great new indie studios that pop up. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. Like over the course of the next 2 years, there will be dozens, if not hundreds of great indie studios that rise from the ashes. But right now, it's like the market has to correct itself. I mean, I feel like we have such an uneducated fan base, not just me, you and I. I mean, like the video games industry as a whole has a lot of people who love playing games and have absolutely zero context for how the sausage gets made.
Absolutely.
And so that what they want is they want the game to come out on time and be of the highest quality, and for everyone to be treated fairly along the way, and for no one to crunch, and for everything to work out great, and for no business to ever have to lay anyone off and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, that's a fucking fantasy. That is an absolute ridiculous idea. It doesn't exist. It's not real. Sorry.
I mean, maybe on Baldur's Gate 3 or something like that, but that is like a unicorn of a project and of a company, and that also doesn't happen. Like,
no, they're not. The people at Larian will be laid off over the course of the years, and people at there probably were many layoffs during the development of the game, and then they rehire or whatever. Like, it's how businesses work, man. I'm not trying to say it's a good thing, but it's just like that's how it fucking functions. You are a cell on a body, and you get scratched off when you're not needed, or sometimes people make really shitty, stupid mistakes or bad calls, and of course that sucks. But like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to like jump on you there.
It's totally fine.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, and I'm really totally on board with you with this uneducated part, because that's also something that when I talk to people that are not in the industry or don't have any idea, or just gamers that ask me like, how's the work on this game, and how's game development and so on, I always try to steer the conversation to, if they want to hear, to explain them how games are made, because I see so many situations where you really feel like this is, okay, video games aren't there for a long time already. And so there's not much pro knowledge and public knowledge about, just like you said, how game development happens. For me, one of the most obvious examples is the games that are in early access or that are on Kickstarter or Patreon or whatever, that start out and then the people realize, oh, this game in the end doesn't have all those features, and it's maybe a different genre, and it also is 3 years late. And it's like, yeah, that's how games are made. Like, you try stuff, and if it doesn't work, you shift to something else. And at some point you don't have this big stone and you want to make this figure out of that, and you make it exactly as planned. You let like the stone speak to you, and at some point maybe it's a racing game, but it could also be like a co-op survival game at the end. I mean, obviously not like that extreme, but oftentimes it's really that crazy, where it's like, okay, we planned for it to be a multiplayer title, but it does work way better than for like a solo player experience, and with all those features scrapped, and instead all those features. And in the end, it's a great game, but people are pissed because they're like expected it to be something else and to be, as you said, like on time and without crunch. But that's not how the sausage is made, and that's something that is, I mean, for the movie industry, we have for many years, we had this behind the scenes, we had interviews, we had so many people knew that it's like, okay, you need so much money to make this, and you need so much time to make a certain kind of movie and a certain kind of thing. And I think people, right now know that. They know that there's a certain style of making movies, and there's a certain order of events. But with video games, it's just like, I guess all this public image comes from you as a gamer or as a consumer getting wind of the game normally with the first trailer, and not realizing it has been in production for 3 or 4 years already.
Oh yeah,
I see that first trailer, because it's always this trailer, and then it takes like 2 years, and then the game comes out. So, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say that another huge mistake over the past several years has been people announcing games before they knew that they were actually going to come out, and then what the public perception is that it was delayed, and you lied to us.
Yeah,
and it was like, no, circumstances fucking changed like big time. Like, we went through the pandemic and like a massive economic shift in the world, and people moving, in my case, moving across the whole fucking planet to get into a better life situation. And yet we're still like why is this late? Like, well, man, it's not as easy as you think. But in general, like, companies, again, in that same kind of peer group, could have all stood to have just not announced anything until they knew for sure it was going to come out. And I know a lot more about marketing now than I did then. So, but go ahead.
Yeah, that makes sense. No, I just wanted to say, it's like, I don't know why this shift has been happening, because it's also happening not just with small studios, but also with bigger ones announcing stuff way before it starts. I mean, just talking about Starfield, which I didn't enjoy it at all, and I didn't enjoy the marketing, but it was announced like way too early, and yeah, and so many games like No Man's Sky that had this. I mean, they had this amazing story, in my opinion. I was skeptical when the first announcement came with No Man's Sky, and I was like, new studio, and they promise a lot of things, and he seems very enthusiastic, and I think I was skeptical because I know Peter Molyneux, and I've had all those game launches before, so I was a bit of burnt child there. So, but then yeah, they redeemed themselves. But in the end, if you look at it, it's like it has taken, I don't know how many years, 8 years, 9 years, 10 years for the game to be in the state that you could say, okay, this is the game they promised many years ago, and that's the normal. It's almost a normal cycle, at least for a massive project like that.
For sure.
Yeah, hopefully, I don't know how we as an industry or as people in the industry can change that. Maybe we can educate people with more behind the scenes stuff and announcing it later than it should be.
That's what this podcast is, right?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it's also about that. I mean, it's also, it is about sound and it is about recording, but also I have people on that seemingly have nothing to do with sound. Namely, for example, but you also do, for example, voiceover stuff. So yeah, let's talk about that for a second. You do voiceover for games sometimes? As a cameo or?
Well, I'll probably have a lot of voiceover in my own games, and I was also I think I will be a character in Stellar Valkyrie, assuming Damian likes the photos that were provided to him. But
you mean
I'm sorry, Call of Ragnar. Yeah,
yeah.
I get. Golly, holy cow!
Too many games.
But the first one was Scythe Dev Team made that game, Happy's Humble Burger Farm, which is a tremendous, tremendous game. Like, if you're listening to this and you haven't played that, it's tremendous. Like, really good.
Yeah, it was just not expensive. It's worth it.
But they wanted to do like a kind of radio thing, sort of similar to the GTA model, where it's like if you're driving or you're in a place with a radio, like you can change the channel, and there's all this kind of kind of 100 hours of content that's constantly flowing. And so there was just like this short segment that I did that was like a mock in the Keep radio show where I'm talking about a fake game called Geriatric Genocide.
Yeah, I remember that.
And it was just, I did that totally pro bono. I was just like, I just want to be part of it. Like, I love John of the Shred, especially, but everybody over at the Scythe Dev Team, they're awesome. I've been following them since they were in the DreadX collections. So I was just happy to be part of that. And then I think later I got reached out to by the gentleman who's making Slayer's X Testament. And he was like, you want to be in this game I'm making? I'm like, yeah. And then I didn't hear anything from like a year. And then I reached back out and I was like, hey, whatever happened to that? And he's like, oh, yeah. Here's the script. And I was like, and so I just, I think I did most of it in like one day. And I played the Mevin Ranuels, the main protagonist of the game, or antagonist, I should say. The protagonist is totally different, Zane. And I don't know, it was just fun. It wasn't like, I didn't do it because I wanted to make money or be a voice actor. It was just because I was kind of confused about the offer. I mean, I guess people hear my voice a lot because of the podcast or because of Realms Deep or whatever. But I don't know. It was just funny because I was like, do you want me to do like a voice or an accent? And he's like, no. This guy's like a dumb redneck. So just be yourself.
You were born for this.
I was born for this role. Like, yeah, perfect. So it was just fun. And I'm open to do, I mean, if you're listening to this and you're trying to commission a dumb redneck to Jack Nicholson your game, I'm happy to do it. But it's not something that I see myself like as a career. It's like, it's just fun.
Yeah. Same here. If you need someone with a strong German accent, I can do that for you.
Yeah.
No, I would really like to have like a voiceover thing as well. And I don't know why, but I kind of feel it's fun to do. And I know I would just do an amateurish job at it because I've worked with voice actors and it's like, it's seriously hard work. And especially in Skywind when we when new people came on and we had to test for the quality of the microphones, I had so many auditions that were absolutely stellar, where it's like, oh, holy fuck, why do you apply to this like free game? But I'm guessing, I mean, yeah, of course it's the Morrowind IP and people love that game, but it's like if you see someone bring a character to life, especially like in a video game, I'm guessing it's almost the same for animated or for 3D Pixar movies. The voice is really the one that makes it feel real or not real. Because if you have great graphics, or even if you don't have that great graphics, if the voiceover is bad, it takes you out. If you have either the quality is bad and you hear it's like someone in his basement recording, or if the performance is bad, it's like this bad play in front of you. But if it hits you on an emotional level, and for me, this is always like with the audio. If it's really good audio, even if the graphics aren't like realistic, your mind kind of connects the dots and makes it feel more real than it is in my mind.
I feel like voice acting is one of those things so there's like a lot of different things. It's just like real acting. I shouldn't say real. That sounds like I'm putting it down. But like, you have your people like, I already said Jack Nicholson, so I'll say him again, who just, whatever role he's in, he's just Jack Nicholson as insert character, right? And then you have like your Daniel Day-Lewis's who can like do a million voices and a million characters, and like, or he could be in the movie the whole time and you don't even realize it's him until you see the credits, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So like you have voice actors who can do all these different voices and you'll never know that it was that person. And then you have voice actors like myself who are not really voice actors. They're just like, you're hiring me for my voice specifically. Right. And it's two different things. Both of them have their merit and their value. But like there's an art to doing voices, which I can't do. I mean, maybe I could do like a Scottish accent if I really tried to do my Robert Brown impression. Shout out to Kingpin. But yeah, it's interesting. There's like Chris, who's the guy who plays Falco in Stellar Valkyrie. He's like a real actor. Like he's going to Rutgers in New Jersey and like studying the Meisner technique and doing deep breathing meditation crap all day long and like really getting into characters and studying them and doing Tennessee Williams plays on the weekends and shit. I saw that guy. He dragged me out to like a stand-up comedy one night, like a open mic night for stand-up comedians, and he got on stage and he just said into the microphone, he's like, I am actually not a comedian. And then he just started doing Henry IV, and he did like a whole scene by himself, and then he just walked off stage, and no one gave a fuck. They were like, who is this guy? And I was like, yo, dude, why did you do that? And I thought it was hilarious. Like it was funnier than any of the open mic comedians anyway. So, but I was like, why did you do that? And he says, if I can do that in front of an audience that is absolutely hostile to me, I will never, ever be nervous in an audition ever again. And I was like, that's pretty wise, Dale. That
is great, yeah. And he is amazing. I mean, the first time I heard like the voice lines in Stellar Valkyrie, I was like, oh fuck, that hits the spot. It's like the 90s kind of gritty coolness in there, and it fits the character, and was like just so much fun to work with that material. So yeah, shout out to Chris.
Well, he'll probably be on your favorite movies and TV in like 5 or 6 years, to be honest with you.
I'm guessing that as well. I have to snatch him up for the podcast before he's famous, so I can like be the nerd that had him first.
That would be wise.
Yeah. So yeah, as we're talking about like voice acting and stuff, one question I always like to ask my guests, and I'm interested to hear what you say, is what is the first sound you ever recorded, and why did you record it?
It was probably me and my brother, my older brother Derek, who's still my best friend in like the whole freaking world. This is going to be a way more fun story than any of your fucking stupid sound design people. But it was us recording our voices and stuff. Like we were really into like Jackass. Like we were the right age for that. So I think he got like a early freaking phone, like one that had a sound recorder on it. And he was trying to pick up chicks and stuff, because he was like that age and I was a little bit younger, but I was, old enough to get what we were doing, but not old enough to have the same amount of interest, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And we would record ourselves like doing funny voicemail box things. And I could play the guitar. So I would be like playing acoustic guitar, like really sexy sounding music. And he would be like, hello, baby. Thanks for calling. Like, leave me some digits and I'll get back with you. That kind of stuff.
Smooth move.
That's probably the first thing I remember like recording ever.
That's cool. I had cool stories on here, but that's top. top shelf.
I'm just
Definitely.
kidding. I know it's way cooler when you're doing real sound design for real. Like,
Nah. The most people, I mean, I've had I recorded with my siblings something on tape, I think 4 times now already. So, and I'm guessing that is also the first time I recorded something. The first time someone asked me that, I instantly thought of, like, oh yeah, when I got my recorder, I recorded this like thunderstorm. But then later on, I think it was with Julie Alvin, where it's like, oh yeah, I remember recording that stuff on cassette back then. So, oh yeah, that was it. So I'm guessing for a lot of people, that's actually the first recording, is like playing around with technology as a kid. But it's interesting then how people get from there to somewhere else, and what they find interesting about the recording, because everyone does something different. And for you, obviously, it's like it still got into the podcast thing. So that's something that you like to do, like talking with people. For other people, it was like, oh, the nature sounds that I recorded, that is interesting. Can I do more of that? So it always goes in different directions, and that's interesting to me.
yeah. And if you count video, I mean, we were doing stunts. Like we were jumping skateboards off the roof into the swimming pool, and like slinging each other off the backs of golf carts in my grandma's big, field and stuff. Like just trying to be funny. That was the main thing. Is we just wanted to be funny so bad. Um, I don't know, man. It's interesting. It's a really good question though, because it really makes you kind of think about, where was I at that point in life? Like, why did I pick up that recorder? Why did I want to record that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I pride myself on having at least one of having at least one interesting question in my podcast episode every time. So that's the one usually.
Yeah.
No, and speaking about the world of sound, what is how important is sound for you? What does sound for your experience in media generally or in life?
I mean, I'm definitely not what I would call an audiophile. Like, I am not overly concerned about the quality of the recording necessarily, although I do appreciate like great albums or movies or TV shows with, where you can tell that the artists put a lot of time and effort into it and like really use that medium to tell the story. You and I talked a lot before even about like David Lynch's films, and I mean, even like, I mean, to get back to wrestling, like the miking the crowd, even at concert recordings and stuff like that, like the roar of an audience is mesmerizing. I mean, it's absolutely flabbergastingly incredible. It's intoxicating. It's a great indulgence of mine, if you can't tell. I'm a bit of an attention whore in that way. So, but I love that stuff. I love I love music, but again, like I'm just as into something like a Burzum album where it's just recorded on like a microphone pilot's helicopter, like a helicopter pilot's microphone, and it sounds like absolute garbage, but that's the point. That's the sound that he wanted for that album. Um, but I also love Steely Dan. I like the guys with just absolutely incredible studio work, and I feel like it's a somewhat of a lost art due to things being digital, like from Pro Tools on. I feel like a lot of music sound engineering has kind of gone out of the window. Whereas if you go back to the Led Zeppelins of the world, the Steely Dans of the world, like those Jimi Hendrix was more. I mean, he was a wizard on the guitar, but he was a studio wizard too. I mean, like that he would do things in albums that were absolutely impossible to recreate live. So music really is like a big part of it for me.
Yeah. The same for me, and I mean, you introduced me to great music. I'm just like on the top of my head is, of course, Billy Strings,
Yeah.
which I instantly fell in love when you showed me that one track, Tinfoil and Turmoil and Tinfoil.
Turmoil and Tinfoil, yeah.
Yeah, and I bought the album, and I now have the vinyl, and I hooked my dad on the music, so it's like it's amazing music. But yeah, I felt like in the recent years, like this lost art, not lost art, but this art form has come back, and people are more inclined to use like different microphones, even like old microphones, but also like not then ruin the recording by putting a lot of digital effects on it, and oftentimes keeping it raw and, yeah, you would say maybe even shitty at some, to keep the personality of that style. And that's also something that's also interesting to me. That's also, of course, I that's what I do with the Call of Saragna sound, where I will try to find something that's old schooly but still hi-fi, and not do it with some kind of effect, but use an actual microphone that produces that sound, because Yeah, that's what I like the raw ones and the experimenting. And I feel like there's a couple of new albums that also do that, but you have to find them and you have to find the artists. But yeah,
Well, can I ask you a question?
yeah, of course.
So, like, in a Freudian sense, even, like, why do you think you're such an audio oriented human being? Like, what happened to you when you were a kid
Hmm.
that made you think that, like, or that put that feeling in you that this is the most important of the five senses, or six or seven if you want to get crazy about it? But yeah.
That is an interesting question that I've been asking myself, and to be honest, I don't have a good answer, but I'm guessing it's. I've always been like a sensitive person and been bullied and stuff like that, but I have been very sensitive to a lot of senses and
Yeah, you're a pussy.
also
I get
taste.
it. No, I'm kidding.
Also taste buds, for example. It's like sometimes I taste something and like a very certain specific texture and specific order of like I don't know tastes is so pleasing to me, and I ask other people how they liked it, and like, yeah, okay, that's nice. It's a bit sour, and I'm like, no, it's not just sour. It's like, and then it crumbles, and then it has this, and like I'm very. Sometimes I feel like I'm hyper aware of some things, and for sound, this is something that came through music. When I first realized that the shitty Walkman I had was like it was very shitty. The quality was very shitty, and then I got like the next upgrade or listened to something on someone's stereo or and I think at a school friend's house at the parent stereo or something. We watched a movie, maybe that. Like I remember some key moments where it's like, oh fuck, that sounds amazing. That sounds like I'm just in that movie, or that sounds like the person is playing the guitar right in front of me. And then like me obsessing over details. I mean, I was the Radiohead kid, of course. That makes total sense for me. But like listening to Radiohead and listening to albums and all those little details and those crafted sounds and those, I don't know, you have those things in there that doesn't serve a purpose for the music, but it sets the tone, and it's so sometimes it's so rich and it's such a world, and it's yeah, making images in my mind go wild. And yeah, I think I don't know, maybe because I listen to a lot of music and hid myself in music and video games, that's where my love stems from. But I have no idea.
No, one of the things that I always appreciate the most about when you and I hang out is like you appear to have this kind of an insane ability to like you'll notice something that no one else notices and really appreciate it and like take a moment to like stop and be like when you were in Aalborg most recently and it was you and me and Nate were all crashing on my couches and shit at the apartment, and maybe we altered our consciousness a little bit perhaps. And, but we all just went like hiking out and like we were going across this giant field, and it was like kind of between. No one knows the geography of Aalborg, but like between a group of buildings where it was just a big grassy field with hills and stuff, and we're standing on top of the hill, and I'm thinking about my own psyche. Like I'm a very like if we were, if you and I were to go to war, you might be like the strategist. I'm the guy who's like carrying the flag into battle. Like I see the other side and I'm going straight there. And you just like grabbed me and stopped me and Nave, and you were like, stop. And I'm like, what? And you're like, just take a moment, just like breathe and like listen to the sound
Hmm.
of like the wind and the birds chirping. And I was like, and it really took me back because before I joined the Air Force, which is where I think I got a lot of this kind of like really direct mission oriented ADHDness from. I would spend every day just like sitting outside in nature, like meditating and like listening to birds chirp and bugs and water and I just love that stuff, and you kind of brought me back to that moment. But it's just not something that I think about nearly as much as I think I ought to. And for you, that's like your whole career.
Yeah, that's basically like the active listening. We had this on the show a couple of times now, but that's something that also a lot of people always say like, oh yeah, and it brought me back to my childhood, or it brought me joy, and it's something that everyone should do, even if you're not a sound designer. And it's really true because yeah, you connect much more with nature, especially through sound. And um, I think especially sound is much more powerful than vision, because even in the blackest night, you can hear the predator coming, and even if you don't see it. So I'm thinking, and this is me with my pseudo-science knowledge of not knowing anything except checking out Wikipedia articles at 3 a.m. when I'm in a deep rabbit hole and want to know how sensors work or something. But that is in my mind, that is why sound will always be superior to visuals. And there's so many, I don't know, so many different layers to it.
There's also smell too.
Yeah, there's also smell too. Of course, smell is also something that evokes a lot of stuff.
Smell is old. The olfactory glands are like way embedded in our in our evolution. So like the ability to smell something can really, like, if you walk into a kitchen and there's like, that smells like jambalaya, like that can really take you back.
Yeah, or it's a specific spice that reminds you of your childhood, and it's like, oh fuck, that just smells like at my aunt's or something. That it's that's something that absolutely powerful. So we should do a podcast next about smells. Hopefully, when the technology is good enough, so we can actually smell the podcast.
The sniffcast or something.
Sniffcast,
like that.
yeah.
No, I think I'm also a very I'm certainly an auditory learner. Like, I much prefer to learn through conversation with talking to people or by listening to audiobooks or podcasts or something like that, because like I said, the attention deficit shit really kicks in, and I want to be doing stuff. I want to be running or walking or doing the dishes or working out, something like that, and I'm just digesting information as it comes in at the same time.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, if I hear a song or if I hear a person's voice or a conversation or something, like even a phrase, it will take me, I'll remember exactly where I was the last time I heard it, nearly every time. Like, it will put me right back in that moment. How many songs are like that, where it's like, you hear this song and it's like, oh yeah, this was playing the first time I made out with my girlfriend or whatever. Like,
yeah,
there's so many examples of that. A good example for me is every time that I hear the song "Fly Away" by Lenny Kravitz, I remember sitting in my dad's truck on this hill that kind of like overlooks the driveway where my family's kind of homestead is. And we were about to take off and go home, but I just remember that song playing, and it was just like this kind of, I was really young. I was maybe like 7 or 8 years old, but I associate that sound with like a time when I was happy, like before anything bad had ever happened to me in life, before anything went wrong. And then shortly thereafter, my life got very complicated, but that's a whole different story for a different podcast. But it just takes you back.
So I'm gonna have to invite you again for that in-depth story if you want to share.
Oh, anytime, bro. Anytime.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, speaking of all the audio in games, so what do you look for in a game? Either the one you play or the one you used to produce, or you market. Is this something where it's where you're like aware of it, or where it's like, yeah, I don't give a fuck if it doesn't sound good. At least it's fun. That's something.
I think it's more about like, does it serve the purpose? Like, it's like a musician in a band. Like, I don't necessarily need you to be the best bass player. Like, I don't need you to be Les Claypool. I need your bass playing in this particular moment to serve the song that we're making. And for video games, it's like, I need the sounds that you make to serve the story we're trying to tell or the experience we're trying to have. So like, I don't really care if it's authentic. I don't care if it's personally like the highest quality audio recording and the latest technology or any of that fucking, I don't understand it and I don't care to. That's your job. And since I met you, it's just like, yeah, just stick Ben on it. Fuck it. I don't care. Like, he'll do better than I could ever dream of doing. So like, just do that. And that's kind of like how I operate in general. Like, I want to find a guy. I'm like Hank Hill, that's my propane, he's my tire guy. I do business with it. When I need a tire, I go to that guy. Because that's your expertise. That's your field.
Yeah.
And Foley. Rim shot. But no, like, one of the best examples I could give you is Hyperlight Drifter. I think that Disaster Piece's work on that game is absolutely incredible. The sounds of the heart beating that come up as you get more and more anxious in the game, and it's all super complicated and dynamic. They really put a lot of effort into it. And a lot of that is literally him foleying like his actual heartbeat through his wrist with a stethoscope, or stuff like that. It's incredible, and that is such an emotional game. I know that for the developer, who was actually going through kind of a scare of potentially dying of heart failure, and my mother also went through that too. It was that game, the audio in that game, and the whole thing itself, but specifically the audio is so visceral, so beautiful, so well thought out, so complex, and yet so simple.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, for me, it's the same. It has to evoke something in me. It has to make me feel something, and it has to fit the project. So also for movies, I mean, but for me, it goes even further, of course, because oftentimes I will go explicitly into the theater, especially nowadays with the 3D audio, and just go to a movie and see it because of the sound. And I remember when we were in Aalborg, we watched Oppenheimer in the cinema, and I remember sitting there and thinking about, like in the beginning, like, oh fuck, the cinema audio is shitty. It's really shitty, but I can feel that there's amazing sound in there. So when I went back home, the first thing I said to my wife was like, hey, we have to see this again in good cinema, because A, the movie was amazing, and B, I'm pretty sure the sound was amazing, and I want to experience it. And I didn't regret it one bit, because it was absolutely stunning. It was one of the few movies that is, I would say, a decent volume, and not this every like 20 minutes there's some loud bang or something. It was a decent volume, but in key moments, I think 2, maybe max 3 moments, it was very loud for a short time. And it made it so impressive, because that's something that I really enjoy, when someone really understands dynamics and does that, because oftentimes movies are either all the time too loud, or they have this like muddiness to them where it's like they're decent volume but nothing sticks out. And
Yeah, you're just a snob, dog. Like,
pretty much.
What I like about being me and not you is that at no point during that seeing Oppenheimer in that theater did I think, this sound kind of sucks or anything like that. I was just like, what a great movie. I'm having fun the whole time. Not one moment was wasted on, I wish this was better.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I get it. I'm that way about a lot of things.
It was a fleeting moment, but it's true that the problem is, I always hear that from composers that. A very good friend of mine, Jay, told me once that I shouldn't learn music theory because I can't enjoy music anymore. And it's like this: if you have this certain set of understanding of what sounds good and how something is supposed to sound and how it makes you feel and how it, like the first time I had my home studio finished, like, and my great setup with my headphones, and I listened to one of my favorite songs, I almost shed a tear, because it's like really, it felt like angels pouring honey in my ear. It was like visceral and very, I don't know, it just felt unreal how good it sounded. So when you have a certain like status and expectation of sound quality, and then you have this, then it ruins it. And like MP3s now, like old MP3s I have from my youth, there are some songs that I used to love, and I cannot hear those MP3s. It's such shitty quality. It sounds like, I know how it is supposed to sound. I know how it should sound, and it's just horrible. So yeah, it ruins a bit the experience, of course.
No, you're just a douchebag, bro.
Yeah, yeah, probably that's the case.
No, I really like. I do understand what you mean. It's just in different mediums, but I don't know. For me, I think to tie this back into like one of your earliest questions we were talking about, like when it comes to like empathy and emotional sensitivity and all that kind of stuff, I care as a musician, even like, and I understand quite a bit about music theory. I care so much more about how it makes me feel than I do about the audio quality or the technical prowess of the guitar player or the symphony's composition or any of that stuff. Like, I would much rather hear Muddy Waters just bend one note that makes me fucking feel his pain, you know? Like, listen to Manish Boy by Muddy Waters, and just try not to cry.
Yeah, yeah.
And if you don't, you're a sociopath. But then you could go listen to Yngwie Malmsteen, and I appreciate that stuff too, like Arpeggios from Hell or some shit like that. And that's all really cool, but it does not have the same effect on me. Like, when I listen to him, I can feel that he's a deeply insecure man who needs to show you how big his dick is by compensating with his guitar knowledge, his technical guitar knowledge. And when I hear Muddy Waters sing about how he's a mannish boy and I'm a man, like all that stuff, I'm like, this guy got hurt. Somebody hurt him bad, and he needs to get that out of his system. And they're both the same thing, but one of them is a much simpler and more straight to the point way of saying the same thing, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I have one of the sounds, one of the tracks I always used to cry to, and I probably still have the same effect. Have to listen to it again. It's More Cheaper, Never an Easy Way. And for me, that was like the connection of realizing that when you grow up, that hardship is like part of life every day, and it's just that is what it is. And it made me like, I was in a state of, I would say, onset of depression, and it made it so real. But it also made me feel a bit better, because I think that's always the case for me with music. When I first heard music that made me feel like someone else felt the same things and had the same mental thoughts and problems and hardships in life, that connected with me. And yeah, this song was something, and it's still dear to my heart, and it's still something that embodies this growing up, this realizing that life is a struggle, but that's also fine. It's how you deal with it. But yeah, I can totally relate to that. Yeah, I'm gonna put those songs in the show notes for sure, for people to enjoy. So listen to all those sounds, and I'm pretty much all out of questions. So the only thing that's left for me is, do you have any shout-outs, any upcoming projects you want to announce, anything you want to say to the audience?
First and foremost, I want to say, Ben, you've been absolutely one of my best friends that I've met in this industry and elsewhere. Like, even if we never work together again, I just think that you're awesome. You really changed the way that I thought about a lot of things. Every member of our team at In the Keep has had some kind of profound effect on me, and that's probably why I wanted to work with them in the first place. Like, when I first interviewed you and Tony and Damian, I just knew that I have to do anything that I can to help see this project through. And so what I will say is for people to go to inthekeep.com, to callofseregnar.com, and make sure they wishlist it and follow along with us as we continue to develop it. If you're a publisher out there and you're looking to fund a really badass indie RPG, we're open to ideas. We're open to your courting, although we will have, we will have very specific terms. I'll say that. I'm not going to let you fuck us. Stellar Valkyrie, of course, Bird Game .space, I believe, is still the place to wish list. So yeah, do that. It's going to come out hopefully this year, but I don't want to rush everybody. Like, I'm already working like the real big boy indie video game industry, so I never want to put pressure on us while we all have day jobs. But I'm really hoping to make a lot of progress on it over the next several months and get that bitch out there. It's a super big passion project for me, like Stellar Valkyrie. Chris and I wrote the entire script together, but I definitely poured my heart and soul into that story. So I hope that people enjoy it. On the 3D Realms side of things, of course, 3drealms.com. Make sure you wishlist Combustion and coming. I don't know when this episode will air, but Wrath is coming out at the end of January, and other way around. Graven in January and Wrath in February. So make sure you grab both of those. They're really great games, and I'm super proud to be part of them. So just much love, peace, love, empathy, people. Read Kurt Cobain's suicide note and tell me why he killed himself.
That's good homework.
Like, tell me why. Yeah, tell me why. I mean it. Like, just pay attention to the words he uses and tell me what happened. And I'll look forward to your answers in the comments and Ben writing them to me.
So. Awesome.
All right.
Thank you for that closing word. And thank you again for being on the show. It has been fun.
Take care, people. Much love.
Looking for more audio-related podcasts to listen to? We're part of the Audio Podcast Alliance, featuring a hand-picked selection of the very best podcasts about sound. Be sure to hear the latest episodes from our friends in the community at audiopodcast.org. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please consider supporting on patreon.com/fieldandfoley or ko-fi.com/fieldandfoley, where you gain early access to episodes in lossless format and can submit questions for our guests. Thank you for listening.